HOA Karen screamed as she shoved my disabled son's wheelchair into the deep end of our community pool. My 12-year-old boy plunged into the water, struggling helplessly as he couldn't swim. What this power-hungry tyrant didn't know: I wasn't just a quiet, single dad, I was a master sergeant who'd been hiding my badge for 3 years. And she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Before we start the story, please comment down from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Willow Creek was a picture-perfect neighborhood where everything had to be flawless. The lawns were always neatly trimmed, the mailboxes identical, and the Homeowners Association (HOA) enforced every rule with an iron fist. I moved here 3 years ago with my son Alex, seeking a peaceful place after my wife died. I was a quiet man, tall and strong, but I didn't talk much. No one knew I was a master sergeant. I kept that secret. After losing my wife, I wanted a safe, peaceful place for Alex, who used a wheelchair because of a condition he'd had since birth. He couldn't walk, but he had a big smile and loved watching the world around him. We lived in a small house at the end of Elm Street. I built a ramp for Alex so he could get inside easily. Most neighbors liked us, but not Karen Mitchell. Karen ran the HOA like she was the queen of everything. She was loud, nosy, and always picking on people for tiny things like a flower pot in the wrong spot or a car parked too long. From the day Alex and I arrived, Karen didn't like us. She stared at the ramp with a frown and muttered about ruining the neighborhood. I just wanted to keep things calm for Alex, so I stayed polite even when Karen glared. The air in Willow Creek felt heavy sometimes. I remembered the first day we moved in, a rainy afternoon, carrying Alex inside while unpacking boxes. I'd hoped this place would be our fresh start, but Karen's sharp voice shattered that hope quickly, complaining about our moving truck blocking the road. I ignored her then, thinking she'd leave us alone. I was wrong. Karen's eyes were always on us, and trouble was brewing. Karen Mitchell didn't waste time making life hard for us. It started with the wheelchair ramp I built outside our house. One morning, Karen marched over, clipboard in hand, and pointed at it. "This is unapproved," she said, her voice loud. "It's ugly and breaks HOA rules." I looked up from tightening a bolt, my hands dirty. "It's for Alex," I said quietly. "He needs it to get inside." Karen scribbled something down and walked off, her lips tight. I hoped that would be the end, but it wasn't. Next, she found more things to complain about. Alex had therapy equipment, braces, and a small exercise mat in the garage. One day the door was open and Karen saw it. She sent a fine in the mail, calling it clutter that ruined the neighborhood's look. Then she started complaining about the faint marks Alex's wheelchair left on the sidewalk. "This is vandalism," she shouted once, waving her arms. Another time, Alex sat on the porch, humming softly to himself. Karen stormed up and said, "That noise is too much. Keep it down." I stayed calm every time. "It's for Alex," I'd say. "Let it go, Karen." I paid the fines or fixed what she demanded, but inside my patience was starting to crack. The neighbors saw it all. Mrs. Carter, an old lady who lived next door, would shake her head. "Poor Alex doesn't deserve this," she'd whisper, peeking through her curtains. She liked us but was scared of Karen's temper. Other kids in Willow Creek used to play with Alex. They'd push his chair or toss him a ball. But when Karen was around, they'd scatter, afraid she'd yell at them too. The street got quieter and we felt more alone. Alex started noticing. One evening as I pushed his chair inside, he looked up at me, his eyes big. "Why does she hate us, Dad?" he asked, his voice small. My heart sank. I knelt beside him, brushing his hair back. "She doesn't hate you, buddy," I lied softly. "Some people just don't understand. You're perfect to me." Alex nodded, but his smile wasn't as bright. I hugged him tight, feeling a protective fire grow inside me. I didn't want him to feel this way, but Karen wasn't stopping. Karen's complaints got worse. She'd walk by our house more often, glaring at Alex when he sat outside. Once, I overheard her saying to another neighbor, "They get special treatment because of that chair. It's not fair." Her voice was sharp, like she hated Alex for being different. I clenched my fists but kept quiet. I didn't want trouble, not yet. I dealt with tough situations as a master sergeant, but here I was just a dad trying to keep my little boy safe. Still, every snide comment from Karen pushed me closer to the edge. The neighborhood felt it too. Mrs. Carter left cookies on our porch once, a quiet way of saying she cared, but she wouldn't speak up. The kids stopped coming by altogether. Karen's shadow hung over Elm Street, and her picky rules turned into something meaner. She didn't just want control, she wanted us gone. I could see it in her eyes, the way she stared at Alex like he was a problem to fix. Trouble was building, and I knew it wouldn't stay small much longer. It was a hot summer day in Willow Creek, and the community pool was busy with kids splashing and laughing. Alex loved being there even though he couldn't swim. His condition made his legs too weak, and his lungs couldn't handle the water. He sat in his wheelchair near the edge, watching with a big smile. I sat close by on a bench, sipping a cold drink, keeping an eye on him like always. The sun was bright and everything felt calm, until Karen Mitchell showed up. Karen marched in, her face red and angry. She spotted Alex's wheelchair and stormed over. "This isn't a handicap zone," she yelled, pointing at the chair. It wasn't even blocking anything, there was plenty of room. I stood up, my voice firm but quiet. "He's not in the way, Karen. Back off." But Karen didn't listen. She never did. Her eyes narrowed and she stepped closer, her hands shaking with rage. Before I could stop her, Karen grabbed the handles of Alex's wheelchair. "You've broken the rules for the last time," she shouted. With one hard push, she shoved the chair toward the pool. It tipped over the edge and Alex fell in with a scream. The wheelchair sank fast and Alex splashed in the deep end, his arms flailing. He couldn't swim, his body wouldn't let him. The crowd went silent, then gasped. I didn't think. I dropped my drink and dove into the pool, cutting through the water. I reached Alex in seconds, wrapping my arms around him as he coughed and cried. His little body shook, water dripping from his hair. I pulled him to the shallow end and climbed out, holding him tight against my chest. My shirt was soaked and my heart pounded with fury, but I kept it inside, for now. Karen stood there, arms crossed, smirking. "He's fine," she said, rolling her eyes. "Stop overreacting." Neighbors stared, some pulling out their phones to record. A few kids whispered, and Mrs. Carter covered her mouth in shock. I sat Alex down gently on the ground, making sure he could breathe. Then I stood up, water dripping from me, and turned to Karen. I yanked off my wet jacket and there it was, my Master Sergeant badge shining in the sun. "You assaulted my son," I said, my voice low and hard. "I'm a Master Sergeant, Karen." Karen's smirk disappeared. Her face went white and her mouth opened, but no words came out. The crowd murmured louder, phone still recording. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. My badge said everything. Karen took a step back, her hands trembling now for a different reason. She'd gone too far and she knew it. Trouble had found her, and there was no escaping it this time. Alex was shaking, his small body cold and wet from the pool. He clung to me, his arms tight around my neck, his breaths quick and scared. Water dripped from his hair onto my soaked shirt. I grabbed a towel from a nearby chair and wrapped it around him, pulling him close. "You're safe now," I whispered, my voice soft but steady. He buried his face in my chest, still coughing a little. His wheelchair was lost at the bottom of the pool. I rubbed his back, my heart aching as I felt him tremble. Karen stood a few feet away, her face pale. The smirk was gone now. "I didn't mean it," she stammered, her voice shaky. "It was an accident. He's fine." But the neighbors didn't buy it. People in the crowd muttered angrily, some still holding up their phones, recording everything. A man shouted, "You pushed him in." Karen's eyes darted around, looking for a way out, but the crowd's anger was growing. I ignored her excuses. I pulled out my phone with one hand, still holding Alex with the other, and called my superiors. "I need backup at the Willow Creek pool," I said, my tone sharp now. I sat Alex down gently on a bench, keeping the towel around him. Then I stepped toward Karen, my badge still shining on my belt. I pulled handcuffs from my pocket and grabbed her wrists. "Karen Mitchell, you're under arrest for assault on a minor," I said, my voice cold and clear. I read her rights. "You have the right to remain silent," each word like ice. Karen squirmed, whining, "This is ridiculous." But I didn't flinch. I clicked the cuffs tight and soon 2 officers arrived. They took her to their car as neighbors clapped quietly, some nodding at me with respect. I turned back to Alex, scooping him up in my arms. He was lighter than ever, his wet clothes sticking to him. I carried him away from the pool, my boots squishing with every step. In my head, I made a promise. This nightmare with Karen was over. I'd make sure of it. The crowd parted as I walked, their eyes soft with worry for Alex. When I got home, I set him on the couch, wrapping him in a dry blanket. His shivering slowed, but his eyes were still wide. A knock came at the door. It was Mrs. Carter, the old lady next door, holding a tray with 2 mugs of tea. Her hands shook a little and her eyes were wet with tears. "I saw it all," she said, her voice cracking. "You're a good man, and Alex, he's a brave boy." She set the tea down and patted Alex's hand. I nodded, my throat tight. "Thank you," I managed. Mrs. Carter smiled proudly, then left us alone. I sat beside Alex, sipping the tea, feeling the weight of the day. Justice had started, but I wouldn't rest until it was finished. A week after the pool incident, the HOA called an emergency meeting in the Willow Creek clubhouse. Everyone was there, neighbors packed the room whispering about what happened. Karen Mitchell was out on bail, sitting in the front row, her arms crossed. She looked smug, like she'd won already. "It was a misunderstanding," she said loudly when the meeting started. "People are making it bigger than it is." But her voice sounded weaker than usual. I wasn't buying it, and neither were the others. I walked in, not as the quiet dad from Elm Street, but as a master sergeant. I wore my full uniform, dark shirt, badge shining on my chest, hat tucked under my arm. People stared as I took a spot at the front. I wasn't hiding anymore. I carried a folder thick with papers and a USB drive. The HOA board, 3 nervous-looking people, sat at a table, avoiding my eyes. I stepped up and started talking, my voice strong and clear. "I've got proof," I said. I plugged the USB into a laptop and played videos from the pool. Phones had caught everything. The room went quiet as they watched Karen push Alex's wheelchair into the water, her angry shout echoing, "You've broken the rules for the last time." Gasps filled the air. Then I pulled out papers, old fines and complaints Karen had written about Alex's ramp, his therapy stuff, even his humming. "She's been targeting my son for months," I said, holding up the stack. "This wasn't an accident." I handed over statements too. Mrs. Carter wrote how Karen scared everyone, and other neighbors added their stories. People started speaking up. Mrs. Carter stood, her voice shaky but loud. "She fined me for my flowers last year." A man in the back said, "She yelled at my kids for riding bikes." More voices joined in, telling how Karen had bullied them for years. The room buzzed with anger. The HOA board shifted in their seats, looking sweaty and trapped. They'd let Karen run things too long, and now it was falling apart. I faced them, my badge catching the light. "Karen needs to go," I said. "She's not fit for the HOA. She hurt my son, and she's hurt this neighborhood." The crowd clapped, some cheering, "Get her out." Karen's face turned red, then white. She tried to argue, "This is unfair." But no one listened. The board whispered to each other, then the head guy nodded. "We voted. She's off," he said, his voice small. "She's done." Karen slumped in her chair, humiliated, her power gone. I didn't smile. I just nodded and packed up my folder. The room felt lighter, like a storm had passed. Karen's reign was over, and Willow Creek was ready to change. After the HOA meeting, Karen Mitchell's troubles got bigger. The law caught up with her fast. She was charged with serious crimes, felony assault on a minor and reckless endangerment for pushing Alex into the pool. I made sure the case was solid, but I wasn't just a master sergeant here, I was Alex's dad too. A few weeks later, the trial started in the county courthouse. Karen sat there looking smaller than ever, her smug face gone. I took the stand wearing my uniform, my badge shining. I told the judge everything, how Karen had targeted Alex for months, how she'd shoved his wheelchair into the water, how Alex couldn't swim. My voice stayed steady, but it shook a little when I said, "He's my son." I pulled him out, scared and coughing. The courtroom was quiet, everyone listening. The evidence was clear. The videos from the pool played again, showing Karen's angry push. Neighbors like Mrs. Carter spoke too, saying how Karen had been cruel for years. The jury didn't take long to decide. The judge looked at Karen and said, "Guilty." She was sentenced to 3 years in jail, no chance to wiggle out. On top of that, she had to pay big fines, thousands of dollars. Some of it went to cover Alex's doctor visits after the incident because he'd needed checkups and extra therapy to feel safe again. The rest was punishment for what she'd done. Karen's head dropped as they led her away, her hands cuffed again. I didn't stay to watch her leave the courtroom. I had work to do. Later that day, I went to oversee her booking. I stood there, arms crossed, while officers took her fingerprints and picture. Karen didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on the floor, muttering under her breath. I made sure everything was done right, no mistakes, no favors. It was my job and I took it seriously. But I didn't feel happy about it. Seeing her locked up didn't bring me joy, just a deep, quiet relief that Alex wouldn't have to fear her anymore. That was enough. Back home, I sat with Alex on the couch. He was doing better, his smile coming back little by little. The fines helped pay for a new wheelchair since the old one was ruined in the pool. I watched him draw pictures, his small hands steady now. I thought about the trial, the jail cell, the money Karen had to pay. It wasn't about winning, it was about keeping my little boy safe. The law had done its part and I'd done mine. Alex's world was a little brighter. Weeks passed since Karen went to jail, and Willow Creek started to feel different. Alex stayed with me in our little house on Elm Street. The pool incident had scared him, but he was getting stronger every day. I got him a new wheelchair, shiny and smooth. I also bought him a soft, warm blanket, bright blue, his favorite color. He'd wrap it around himself and smile again the way he used to. One sunny afternoon, I pushed him around the yard, his laughter filling the air. The trauma was still there, but it was fading and I could see his light coming back. The neighborhood changed too. With Karen gone, the HOA stopped being so strict. No more silly fines or angry notes. People relaxed and they started coming by to see Alex and me. Mrs. Carter brought a plate of warm cookies one day. "For my brave boy," she said, patting Alex's hand. Alex grinned and shared one with me. The kids who used to play with him came back too. They knocked on the door with a new ball asking, "Can Alex come out?" I pushed him outside and they tossed the ball gently, laughing as he caught it. The street felt alive again, like Karen's shadow had finally lifted. One quiet evening, Alex sat with me on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange. He looked up at me, his eyes big and bright. "You're my hero, Dad," he said softly. My heart swelled. I pulled him close, hugging him tight, the blanket soft between us. "You're mine too," I whispered. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. No more fights, no more fear, just me and Alex safe together. I knew we'd be okay now. The ramp outside our house stayed. One day the neighborhood kids grabbed some paint, red, blue, yellow, and turned it into a bright, messy masterpiece. Alex watched from his chair, clapping as they worked. "It's pretty," he said, and I nodded. It wasn't just a ramp anymore, it was a sign things were better. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was lighter now. People waved when they passed by, and the air didn't feel heavy anymore. Karen's mean rules were gone and the neighborhood could breathe. Alex and I kept our quiet life, rebuilding it step by step. I'd push him to the park, or we'd sit outside with lemonade watching the world go by. The cookies, the ball, the painted ramp, they were little things but they meant everything. Alex's smile was back and my heart was full. We'd made it through together and that was all that mattered.